All right, everybody, buckle up because today we're going deep underground, like really deep. We're talking about cannabis roots.
Yeah, we're getting down and dirty, exploring the fascinating world of what's happening beneath the surface.
I've got to say, I never thought I'd be so fascinated by dirt. But we dug into some research about soil health and nutrients and all that good stuff, and let me tell you, it's a whole hidden world down there.
Absolutely. And one of the things that really stood out to me was how much emphasis was placed on having healthy soil. Like,
Huh?
that's the foundation for everything.
Yeah, so it's not just about sticking a seed in some dirt and hoping for the best. Thing is telling us we need well-aerated soil, well-draining, and what was that other? Oh, yeah, teeming with organic matter.
Right. It's like, you can't just have dead dirt, right? It's got to be alive.
So why is that so important? I mean, what's actually going on in that soil that makes such a big difference for these cannabis plants?
Think of it like this. The soil is like a bustling city, okay? And in this city, you've got billions, maybe trillions of tiny little citizens, microorganisms,
Yeah.
bacteria, fungi, you name it. They're all down there.
So it's not just dirt, it's like a whole ecosystem.
Exactly. And these microorganisms, they're not just hanging out, they're working hard, breaking down organic matter like old leaves and stuff, transforming it into nutrients that the cannabis plant can use.
So it's like this whole underground composting operation.
Exactly. And that process, that's what we call nutrient cycling. It's the lifeblood of a healthy soil ecosystem.
Okay, so we've got all these nutrients being made, but how do the roots actually get their hands on them?
So it's not just about making the nutrients, it's about making them accessible, right? And that's where these microbes, they really shine. Because you see, they don't just break down nutrients, they also create a sort of like a communication network in the soil.
The communication network.
Yeah, they release enzymes in these organic acids that help to like bind nutrients to the soil particles. And that makes it easier for the roots to access them.
So it's like a delivery service bringing those nutrients right to the plant's doorstep.
Exactly. And this is happening, by the way, with pretty much every plant on Earth. It's not just a cannabis thing.
That's pretty wild. We often take it for granted, but the more we learn about soil, the more amazing it really is. It's like its own little universe down there.
Absolutely. And the health of that universe, it has a direct impact on the health of our plants. So if you want those lush, thriving cannabis plants,
You got to start with the soil.
you got it.
So we've got this whole underground city happening, all these microbes working to make nutrients for our cannabis plants. But then it starts talking about something called resistance to water uptake. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I thought water was a plant's best friend. What's this resistance all about?
It's funny you should say that because, yeah, we tend to think water, plants, good, easy, but it's not always that straightforward.
There's more to it than just like dumping a bucket of water on them and calling it a day.
Way more to it. We were just talking about soil composition, right? All those different particles, the spaces between them, well, that all factors in.
So it's not just about how much water you give them, but how that water actually gets to the roots.
Exactly. It's like an obstacle course down there for those water molecules.
I'm picturing those poor little water molecules trying to like squeeze their way through a maze of dirt and roots.
That's a pretty good way to think about it. And one of the biggest factors is something called soil moisture tension. So the amount of water the soil can hold and how tightly it holds onto it, that makes a big difference.
The tighter the soil, the harder it is for those roots to get the water right.
Right. Imagine trying to drink a thick milkshake through a tiny straw.
Been there.
That's kind of what it's like for roots in dense, tightly packed soil. It takes a lot of effort to pull that water in.
So what can we do? Like, how do we make sure those roots are getting their milkshake?
Well, for starters, remember those healthy roots we talked about, the ones with all those tiny root hairs? Those are key.
So it's like having a super-powered straw for maximum water uptake.
Exactly. More surface area means more opportunity for absorption. And then on top of that, there's capillary action.
Capillary action. Okay, now you're just using big words to make me feel dumb.
No way. It's actually pretty simple. Think of it like those tiny little spaces between the soil particles. They act like little straws themselves, pulling water upwards.
So it's like the soil is helping out, pulling up the water for the roots to use. I like it when nature lends a hand.
Me too. But of course, there's always a catch, right?
There's always a catch.
This capillary action, it only works if the moisture level is just right. If it's too dry, those capillaries are empty, no pulling power. Too wet, and well, it's like trying to suck a drink through a straw that's already full.
So it's all about balance, finding that sweet spot where the soil is wet enough to keep those capillaries working, but not so wet that it drowns the roots. Okay, so we've got our thriving soil city, we've got our root straws working hard, and our capillaries playing tug of war with the water. Also mentioned something called soil water potential, and I'm not going to lie, that one sounds a little intimidating.
It does sound kind of technical, right? But it's actually a pretty cool way to think about how water moves in the soil. Imagine like each pot is its own little pressure cooker.
Okay, a pressure cooker. I'm listening.
So inside that pressure cooker, the water's not just hanging out, it's under pressure. And that pressure, it affects how easy or hard it is for the roots to get the water they need.
So, like, the more pressure, the harder it is for the roots.
It can be, yeah. One type of pressure is called hydrostatic pressure. That's the pressure that builds up when the soil's totally saturated, like if you really overwater.
Said too much of a good thing, even with water.
Exactly. Remember those air pockets we talked about? Super important for those roots to breathe. Well, too much water in those air pockets, they get squeezed out.
Mm.
It's like if you've ever been swimming and stayed underwater too long,
Yeah.
not a good feeling.
Definitely not what we want for our roots. Also mentioned something called osmotic pressure. Is that bad? Should we be worried about osmotic pressure?
Osmotic pressure is actually the key player here.
Yeah.
It all comes down to the balance of water and nutrients in the soil. So think of it this way. You've got your plant cell, right? Imagine it's like a little water balloon.
Okay, water balloon, got it.
And then you got the soil solution, which is like the water and all the dissolved nutrients surrounding the roots.
Right, like our nutrient soup we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
water naturally wants to move from where there's more water to where there's less water.
Okay, that makes sense.
And here's the thing, the soil solution isn't just water, right? It's got those dissolved salts and nutrients in it. So the more stuff dissolved in the water, the less watery it is, you could say.
So the more nutrients in the soil, the harder it is for the roots to pull the water in. That seems kind of backwards.
It does seem a little counterintuitive, but the plant needs a certain amount of pulling power to get that water.
Right.
And that pulling power, that's osmotic pressure.
So a little bit of salt and nutrients, that actually helps pull the water into the roots.
You got it. It's all about balance. When those nutrient levels are moderate, they create a kind of gradient that pulls the water in. But, and this is important, if you go too crazy with the fertilizer,
You create a nutrient traffic jam.
exactly, that's what we call nutrient lockout. The salt concentration outside the roots gets so high that the roots can't absorb anything, not even water.
So it's like they're drowning in a sea of nutrients, but they're still thirsty.
Exactly. Poor things. They're surrounded by what they need but can't access any of it. It's all about balance.
Balance is key. Got it. So we talked about the ideal soil moisture, making sure it's not too wet or too dry. What about this osmotic pressure? What can we do to make sure we're not messing that up?
Well, one of the simplest things is just being mindful of how you water. Remember we talked about overwatering and underwatering.
Right. Those are both no-nos.
Exactly. Overwatering, it dilutes the nutrient solution, so it messes with that osmotic gradient. And underwatering, well, that can concentrate the salts, leading to, you guessed it, nutrient lockout.
So moderation is key, like with most things in life, I guess.
Words to live by. And if you think you might have gone a little overboard with the fertilizer, one thing you can do is flush the soil with plain water. It'll help reset the balance.
Like giving your plants a big old glass of water after a salty meal.
Exactly. It's all about finding that sweet spot, right?
Man, who knew there was so much to learn about cannabis roots? It seems like there's this whole hidden world down there, all these forces at work that we never even think about.
It's pretty amazing when you stop and think about it, right? This whole intricate dance between the soil, the water, the nutrients, and it's all happening at a microscopic level.
Well, I think we definitely unearthed some serious knowledge today. From the bustling city of microbes to the delicate dance of water and nutrients, it's clear that understanding what's going on beneath the surface is crucial for growing healthy, happy cannabis plants.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And the really cool thing is that a lot of these principles, they apply to all sorts of plants, not just cannabis. It really highlights how interconnected everything is in the natural world.
So next time you water your plants, any plants, take a second to think about all the amazing stuff that's happening underground, all those hidden forces working to help your plants thrive. It's a whole world waiting to be discovered, and we're here to guide you, right here on The Deep Dive.